What's up, guys? Today I'm gonna start my first video on a core deck list for Vynnset. And so we're gonna go to Fabrary.net. Been using them for deck building for some time now. Kind of easy integration into Talishar if you want to play some web-based games on Talishar. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and name it Vynnset Core. And the idea behind this is that I want to create a list that we can kind of like start from, where maybe we want to tinker with some specific cards or some specific strategies. But there's always going to be a core set of cards that Vynnset is going to want to play, no matter what the deck is. And so whenever LSS releases a new hero in a new set, especially if it has a new mechanic, you're basically going to want to go look for the cards that have that new mechanic on them and slap them in the deck, because the more likely than not, the new hero is designed around that concept. So yeah, Vynnset is a Shadow Runeblade, so we're going to look at the Shadow Runeblade cards here. So one thing I do want to say is Vynnset is a replacement for the Shadow Runeblade hero Chain. As we all know, Chain's playstyle was very aggressive, very go wide. You don't block a whole lot, but you use the banish zone as card advantage, and Chain's ability lets you ramp that up super quickly. Vynnset's style is a little bit different. She's going to be banishing one card per turn, and you have an option to accrue some cards in the banish zone, but more often than not, you're gonna play out that one Shadow Runeblade card with the keyword Runegate, which I'll talk about here in a second. So it seems right off the bat that while the previous Shadow Runeblade hero Chain wanted to kind of fill up your banish zone and then play all the cards out, maybe doing 3-4 attacks wide, more often than not, you're just going to be banishing one card and then playing it out. Maybe two at most, a lot of the time for Vynnset. Okay. So let's just zoom in on her hero text. So one of the things that drew me to Vynnset as a hero is that her game plan involves the use of rune chants. As I mentioned before, in my intro video, Vynnset is my other favorite Runeblade hero, and his hero text lets you create rune chants anytime you played a Runeblade card after playing a non-attack action card. Vynnset's hero text is at the start of your turn, banish a card from your hand. If you do, create a rune chant token. So that's going to be one of your sources of rune chant tokens. And then you're likely going to want a couple more cards in your deck that will help you produce those so you can trigger your Runegate attacks. The second ability, whenever you play a Shadow non-attack action card, you may pay 1 life. If you do, the next rune chant effect that would deal damage can't be prevented. So this is going to be useful if you can manage to get your opponent down below 10 life, or probably more often this is going to come into effect when you're trying to finish off the opponent when they're below 5 life. But critically, the reason why this ability is important is because self-damage is a way to trigger some of the abilities of your new Shadow Runeblade cards. All right, so let's take a look. The very first thing, as I mentioned, we're going to want a large number of attacks that have their Runegate effect. It has almost like a replacement cost, where if you control rune chants equal or greater to the cost of the card, you can play the attack for free from the banished zone. That kind of brings up the point that Vynnset is going to want to have a few rune chants on the board so she can play out her attacks. The most obvious attack, the most obvious attack that would go in the deck is going to be an attack that generates more rune chants. So I have Deathly Whale highlighted here. When the combat chain closes, create rune chant tokens equal to the number of heroes who have lost life this turn. So, you're not only going to be creating a rune chant if you deal your opponent damage, but if you are able to self-inflict damage, then you're going to be able to create a rune chant there as well. So there's like two different ways you can inflict the self-damage. One is paying a life to the shadow non-attack action cards, and then the second is going to be through the use of the flail, which is her specialization weapon, the Flail of Agony here. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dump all these Deathly Whales into the deck here. So red is going to be your 6 attack, the one that you're going to use for the power the most. Let me just type in Deathly Whale here. All right, so yellow, it's not a 6 attack, which that's completely fine. It's still threatening at 5. And the Deathly Whale blue we're going to throw in there. Of course, you can attack with it anytime and try and generate the 2 rune chants off the back. It's also a blue pitch, and of course, all the class attack actions are going to block for 3. So pretty much any deck that I play with Vynnset, it's going to have 9 of Deathly Whale. It's going to have all these cards. All right, so let's go back to our Shadow Runeblade category of cards. The other cards that you want to take a look at whenever you're building a deck for a new hero are going to be the Majestics. So the Majestics that they released alongside Vynnset in Dusk Till Dawn are going to be the widespread cards. And you can see here there's 3 different cards, 1 of each pitch. I'm going to throw a couple of these in the deck, and then we'll zoom in so we can see the effects. All right, let's take a look. So at red, we're going to have Widespread Ruin. This is going to be a 2-cost Rune Gate shadow attack. And then when the combat chain closes, each hero who has lost life this turn banishes the top card of their deck. At first, when you look at this, you're like, banish the top card of your opponent's deck. Okay, like, big deal. They have like 60 cards plus in their deck. Just getting rid of one random card isn't really going to give you card advantage, in your turn cycle. So you might think, okay, this isn't very powerful. But you also need to think of it as an additional way to get cards in your own banished zone. So in order to create some of the more powerful combos for Vynnset, you're going to want to have multiple cards in your banished zone. And Vynnset's ability only allows you to banish 1 card at the beginning of your turn. So you're going to need other ways to get cards in your banished zone. Widespread Ruin is one of these ways. You can do the self-inflicted damage from, again, a shadow non-attack, or potentially following up with the Flail of Agony before the combat chain closes, and then you can banish the top card of your deck. We'll hope it's a Deathly Whale or something else good you can throw at your opponent. The other good thing about this card is that it's a 2-cost, so you can trigger the Rune Gate with just two rune chants. It's easier to get to the 2 rune chant threshold than the 3 rune chant threshold without taking turns off attacking. So, this is good both in the banish zone, and additionally, if you just have it in your hand or potentially in your arsenal, you can still pay for it pretty easily. All right, so that's Widespread Ruin. The next one, Widespread Destruction, 3-cost Rune Gate at yellow. Sorry. This on-hit effect for this Widespread is going to be Arsenal Destruction. As we know from the how often Command and Conquer is put into decks, Arsenal Destruction is a pretty powerful effect, especially in the current meta with Rangers, Alexi, Azalea around, and then heck, nobody wants their arsenal destroyed, right? So just to read the text, when the combat chain closes, each hero who has lost life this turn banishes a card from their arsenal. It is only one card, so if you're up against Alexi in the current meta, usually they have 2 arsenal slots, potentially 2 arsenal cards, and they can choose which one to get rid of. But it's still a nice on-hit, a nice on-hit effect, if you will. This also triggers if your rune chants have dealt damage to the opponent as well. Lastly, there is a trick with the Widespread Destruction where if you have a Rune Gate-able card in your arsenal, like for example the Widespread Ruin, and then you play a Shadow non-attack during the combat chain and pay the life, you can close the combat chain after Widespread Destruction and banish a card from your own arsenal, and then potentially play that if you have another way to generate rune chants. So it's a pretty good card, and it's funny if you look at like the TCG player prices or just the market values, Widespread Destruction is the cheapest one. I would argue that this is kind of one of the more powerful cards out of the 3. So I don't understand why it's kind of the bottom of the food chain in terms of pricing. But yeah, a good card. It's a yellow 3-cost. So at Majestic, especially with the Dusk Till Dawn releasing all the Rune Gate cards that we have so far, we don't have too many different Rune Gate cards, so we're going to want to put all these Majestics in the deck. All right, so the last one, I'll talk about Widespread Annihilation here. This one is a 4-cost, so it's going to require you to generate 4 Rune Chant tokens before you can trigger the Rune Gate ability. It is a blue pitch, so oftentimes you want to pitch it early, perhaps. But the effect, I'll just read it. When the combat chain closes, each hero who has lost life this turn banishes a card from their hand. This card is going to give you card advantage, and oftentimes if you set this up and Rune Gate it out, your opponent's going to block with basically all their cards, so they don't have to lose any. So it's a big it's a big way to gain tempo. It just takes a little bit a little bit of trickery to come up with the 4 rune chance to use it. So anyhow, we have all the widespreads that you can possibly play. We're always going to play those in Vynnset unless they come out with a new set and just like some ridiculous new Rune Gate cards. But as far as I can tell, I would always want to have all these cards in the deck. All right. So these are going to be the Rune Gate cards that I'm always going to want to have in any deck. So the other thing that is kind of core to the Runeblade playstyle is playing non-attacks and attacks together. Especially with Vynnset's ability, whenever you play a Shadow non-attack action card, pay 1, you want to have access to to this ability. Otherwise, you're just going to have basically blank text on your hero's text box. So let's take a look. Let's go ahead and take a look at the shadow non-attacks. Yeah, we'll go ahead and click the rune blade as well. All right. So for Vynnset, Envelop in Darkness, this is going to be my favorite of the non-attacks. It creates a rune chant. It's 1 cost. It gives your next rune gate attack action card a buff. So the red is going to be a +3, yellow +2, blue +1. In my decks, I really like to play all the reds for the +3. So I'm going to go ahead and slap 3 of these in the deck. The only drawback of this card really is that it's a 2-block. But if you're going for more aggression, you don't mind the 2-block so much. And then just the power that it gives you and the 1 rune chant to potentially play out a card on a turn when you've just banished like one card, producing 1 rune chant. It's everything you want. So we're going to play the reds. I will also always put the blues in my deck as well, because you want to have a fair amount of blues. So we're going to go ahead and choose to put all the blues in the deck. So this one only gives you a +1, but sometimes if you're playing it on a rune gate with a 6 power, like all the widespreads are 6 power. So if you're putting the +1 on one of those, then you're giving it a breakpoint, which is nice especially for Mavrine Skies, which is the next non-attack that I'm going to talk about. So the 3 envelops at blue and 3 at red, that's 6 shadow non-attacks that are going to let you trigger Vynnset's second ability there. I think the most powerful one, you might be able to guess, but it's been around for a while. It's shadow puppetry. So I'm going to throw these in the deck. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so we can talk about it. So shadow puppetry, 0 cost, next attack action gains +1, go again, and if it hits, look at the top card of the deck, you may banish it. The +1, super nice for the breakpoint, again, on all these 6 attack rune gate cards, like I was talking about. The go again is just awesome because it helps you chain into another attack, potentially another rune gate attack, and then it at worst you're getting a flail like after your rune gate attack. And then the other nice thing is if you hit, you can take a look at the top card of your deck, and you get to choose if you want to banish it or not. Unlike the widespread ruin that's just like, hey, look, you've taken damage, you're going to banish. The shadow puppetry lets you take a look, and then you can decide whether to banish or not. So like a simple combo with shadow puppetry is you play the shadow puppetry, you pay 1 life, you rune gate a deathly wail. Since you've dealt yourself damage and you've forced the first rune chant to be unblockable, your opponent's definitely taken the damage. So after the deathly wail, you close a combat chain. Well, let's say the deathly wail hits because it's coming in for 7 thanks to the +1. You look at the top card of your deck. Let's say it's like a 2 cost rune gate attack. You break the chain. You're going to create 2 rune chants from the deathly wail's ability. And then those rune chants are going to be sitting there for you to rune gate again, playing out, for example, like a widespread ruin. So after your 3 and 7 here, you're coming in for another 2 and 6 at least here. you know. And this combo can get even more nuts if you start using the Spellbound Creepers to play out the Shadow Puppetry, you know, in say the reaction phase after playing the Deathly Wail out, because then the Widespread Ruin is also going to get go again. In addition to you having created an action point from playing a non-attack as an instant. So anyways, 3 Shadow Puppetry, they're always going to go in the deck. I can't see any way, any strategies where you wouldn't want to have a Shadow Puppetry in your deck. It is a 2-block. Again, you know, you got to sacrifice a little bit for this power, right? So, yeah, we're going to put that one in there. I think it's all... So speaking of, or moving on to the next non-attack actions that you would want to play, let's go ahead and look at some more that were released in Dusk Till Dawn alongside Vynnset. So I'm going to click on Runeblade. Let's look at Runeblade and Shadow here. And I'm actually just going to type it in here. The next one I want to talk about is Putrid Stirrings. I'm going to toss a few of these in the deck and then zoom in and talk about it. Okay. Putrid Stirrings. This is basically like an upgraded Howl from Beyond for Vynnset. It's a card that you may play from the Banish Zone, so you can banish it with Vynnset's ability at the beginning of the turn, making a rune chant. And if you have another rune gateable attack in the Banish Zone, you can pitch a blue to play this Putrid Stirrings. It's a shadow non-attack, so it gives you an opportunity to trigger Vynnset's second text ability, and then you get +5 on your next rune gate attack. So it's kind of, your next rune gate attack is coming in for, you know, 9 through 11 damage a lot of the time, plus the rune chance. And you know, to boot, it's a 3-block. It's a 3-block non-attack. All the ones that we've looked at so far are just 2 blocks. So, you know, worst case, you're getting 3-block out of this card. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Again, I always kind of look at the red cards and the blue cards whenever I'm considering any card that's in a cycle. So we'll start with red and blue, and then we'll go back and look at the yellow cards. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in the blues as well, because it's a blue block 3. The blue version will give your next attack action card that you rune gate a +3. So, you know, it's still decent. It's still decent. If you have an extra blue in your hand, you pitch for +3 on your next attack. It's great. It's great. So I think that this is a good opportunity to kind of talk about what Vynnset wants to do, what her playstyle is, you know, begging you to do compared to the previous Shadow Runeblade. So as I was saying before, like Chain's hero ability basically gave you go again on a Shadow or Runeblade attack. So, you know, heck, it's in his name, Chain. You want to chain attacks along. You want to create a long combat chain. So, you know, you're looking for go again, go again, go again. Now, Vynnset's ability here, Iron Maiden, when you look at the hero, you know, she looks kind of like a tank. So your immediate reaction is, okay, maybe this is a tankier hero. So maybe I'm going to want to block. Maybe I'm going to want to play like a Guardian. Maybe I'm going to want to play like Bravo. Maybe I'm going to want to, you know, just send one big attack at you each turn, right? So that's where these like Putrid Stirrings really kind of lead you in that direction, right? It's an expensive buff at 3 cost. But yeah, you can block with a couple cards, and then maybe you banish this, or you banish your Rune Gate attack you pitch the blue for it. You're just coming in for one big attack with a lot of damage. And in the case of the widespreads, it's you're threatening an on-hit effect that your opponent is gonna want to prevent, and likely, oftentimes they just can't prevent it. So, they're looking at taking a lot of damage and losing an arsenal card or a card from hand. Just looking at the hero, that's kind of what it seems like LSS wants us to do with this hero. Now, my background in Runeblade, I've played a bit of Chain, but I really have enjoyed playing Vynnset. And if you know Vynnset, he plays 9 Mavrian Skies in his deck. And sometimes on top of that, you're looking at 3 additional Lead the Charges. So that's 12 cards that enable Go Again. My inclination is to try to play Runeblades in a way that lets you attack multiple times in each turn. So that brings me to the next card, which is not a shadow card, but as I mentioned, it's going to be Mob Skies. So this kind of hits multiple points, right? So first is the Go Again, like I was talking about. It's going to give your attacks Go Again, which fits my personal play style. I'm going to go ahead and put 9 of these in here, and we'll talk a little bit about why. But one of the things I haven't talked about very much so far is the rune chant generation, right? So all these RuneGate cards, they require you to generate rune chants in order to trigger the abilities. So you're gonna do that in several ways, but one of them is the on-hit effect from the Mavrian Skies. All right. So the Mavrian Skies says that the next Runeblade attack action card you play gains Go Again, and if it hits at red, it's going to create 3 rune chant tokens. At yellow, it's going to create 2 rune chant tokens, and at blue, it's going to create 1 rune chant token. All right. If you're looking at perhaps trying to play multiple attacks out in one turn and potentially playing out multiple RuneGate attacks in one turn, getting these mob on hits is going to be pretty important. The most powerful one is just going to be red Mob Skies, right? So the red Mob Skies on hit is going to let you play any 3-cost RuneGate card that you may have in Banner Zone. So basically anytime your opponent sees a red Mob Skies, they're just going to say, all right, I'm going to block this, right? It's that, or they're playing a super aggressive hero that they're just not going to block anything. and we want to punish them for that, right? So if you're playing against Alexi or a Fi or something, and you throw an attack with the red Mob Skies on it, the odds are they're going to consider not blocking it, and that's going to let us punish them even more. All right. Similar, as I was mentioning, in Vynnset, I'm looking to play 12 attacks that enable Go Again, or 12 non-attacks that enable Go Again. And here we have 9 Mob Skies and 3 Shadow Puppetries. So that's 12 cards. So basically similar to the Vynnset list, but we're not playing Lead the Charge. In place of that, we're able to play Shadow Puppetry, which is exponentially more powerful than Lead the Charge. That being said, as I mentioned, at her core, maybe Vynnset Iron Maiden doesn't want to go wide all the time, right? So I think you probably need less than 12 Go Again cards, unless it's a very specific matchup, which I can kind of talk about. So what I'm going to do is I would take these yellow Mob Skies and just put them in the sideboard. because I think they are powerful cards. Like the on hit of creating 2 rune chants lets you play a lot of the 2 cost rune gate attacks. But the number one reason why this is important to my own strategy is the Dromai matchup. So traditionally, Rune Blades are the natural predator for illusionists. And part of that reason is we give our attacks go again, so we can threaten a lot of damage, and then we still have the opportunity to come in after that and destroy whatever aura or ally that they have floating around. So especially with Dromai, where the on hit is basically a free on hit. You just target a dragon and your attack's going to hit. So you're getting free rune chance off the back of that attack, which means that you can go 2-3 wide with rune gate attacks, depending on what you have available to you at any given time. All right, so I'm going to add just a few more cards here before we call it on the core, and then from there I can go into some later videos that kind of talk more about specific strategies and what cards we would add for those. All right, so I want to add one more rune gate attack that's pretty common, and that's Deathly Delight. So I'm going to go ahead and add again and then zoom in on it. Deathly Delight is a 2-cost rune gate attack. Comes in for 5. The ability with this one is that you gain life equal to the number of heroes who have lost life this turn when the combat chain closes. So, when you're spending life to trigger Vynnset's ability, or when you're swinging the flail, like naturally you're going to be losing life here and there. So the Deathly Delight is a good, good hefty attack at 5 that's, going to let you kind of recover some of that lost life. Sometimes you can net positive, but if you're just breaking even, that's still pretty good too. I would only put the reds in the core deck for Vynnset, because the 5 is quite threatening. If you're playing the yellows at 4, at least it's a break point, but it's less of a priority. And then the blue Deathly Delight's only going to come in for 3. That's a 1-card block for your opponent. So oftentimes it's just not worth it. But I will include the reds. Okay. Next, I want to include a few more cards that help enable Vynnset's game plan to rune gate attacks, and those are rune chant generators. The most important one, and I think other players have kind of highlighted this in the past, it's going to be the Rune Blade incantation. If I can spell it right. Rune Blade incantation. Sorry. I'll get there. Here we go. Okay, let's go ahead again, add it to the deck, and then talk about it. Okay, Rune Blood incantation. So this is going to come into the arena after you pay to play it. 1 cost. Enters with 3 verse counters on it, and at the beginning of each turn, you count down from the 3 and create 1 rune chant at the beginning of your turn. So this in Vynnset, like, this is a really good card because it gives you kind of a prolonged effect where each turn you get that 1 rune chant. So in addition to banishing the card to Vynnset's ability and creating 1 rune chant, the incantation will trigger and create 1 more rune chant. So that gives you 2. And that enables you to at least play, a 2-cost rune gate card. if you just have, say, a 1 card hand and it's a 2 cost rune gate, you can play out a turn with this. So it's really strong in that regard. It does have go again, so if you're pitching a yellow or a blue for an envelop in darkness, you can use the 1 remaining to play out a Runeblood incantation and then rune gate your attack. It's just super strong. So this is an excellent like turn 0 or turn 1 play for Vynnset. If you're going first, you get a Runeblood incantation, you set that up, you banish a card, you arsenal a good card, maybe a Mauve or a Shadow Puppetry, and then you pass on over, because your next meaningful turn is going to be really meaningful as you start that turn with 3 Rune Chants in effect. So even more than in other decks like Viscerai or Chain before Vynnset, like the Runeblood incantation is just so strong in Vynnset. So the other card that I have been playing in all my lists is just the defense reaction, which is reduce to Rune Chant. Before I go on to that, let me just mention that I play 3 red Runeblood incantations. I've toyed around with like 1 or 2 yellow ones, and sometimes they're good, but sometimes it leads to some pretty inconsistent hands where you'll have like all non-attacks and then you just can't play anything during your turn. Maybe an incantation and pass, and that's a big tempo loss. So I like to just kind of restrict it to the 3 red Runeblood incantations. All right, back to the reduce to Rune Chant. All right, so in my deck list, I'm going to play 3 of the reduce to Rune Chants. They're going to be played in most matchups. So what it is basically it blocks for 4 in the reaction phase. It costs 1 less for each Rune Chant that you have. So as long as you have a Rune Chant on the field, then it's a 0 cost. Interestingly, if you have Frostbites and you have more than 1 Rune Chant, you can play this to break the Frostbite because it's reduced by 1 for each Rune Chant that you control. So if your Frostbite would make it cost 2 instead of 1, and you have 2 Rune Chants, then it's still going to cost 0 and break that Frostbite in the end. Sometimes you'll have to pay 1 to play it out, but it can be good, for example, if your opponent is on the play and they attack you during their first turn. You can pay to play the reduce to Rune Chant, which is not very efficient, but if their attacks aren't that threatening, that means that you'll go into your turn starting with 1 Rune Chant already. So this is a really strong card, and I throw it in the sideboard just to kind of consider at the beginning of each match, like who is the opponent and is it good to have reactions in. Like you're not going to play this versus the Wizards, for example. So I just throw it in the sideboard, and then I'd say 80% of the time, 90% of the time, they're going in the deck, but they just start there. All right. Okay, the last non-attack, which is another Dusk Till Dawn card, is going to be Funeral Moon. So this one, I'd say this is going to be a little bit divisive, depending on who's building the deck. But let me just read the text at first. Funeral Moon is, you may play this from your banished zone. If a hero has lost life this turn, you may play it as though it were an instant. Create a Rune Chant token. So basically this card creates 1 Rune Chant token, but it doesn't have go again. But if any hero has taken damage, or lost life rather, then you can just play this as an instant. So this is another card that, like, if you take damage and if you take damage on your opponent's turn and you're really desperate for Rune Chants, you can go ahead and play it out as an instant on your opponent's turn, and then you can start your turn with 1 Rune Chant. This also has like a lot of potential to be played in conjunction with an eloquence token to give it go again. And if it's played as an instant, the go again will generate an action point out of nowhere. So you could pop the grimoire, which we'll talk about that equipment piece here in a second. You could pop that for an eloquence token, or you could play Requiem for the Damned, and together with this Funeral Moon, and you can generate an action point. So I think the Funeral Moon may be a key card in some of the combo Vynnset decks that haven't quite been figured out yet. All right, so yeah, Funeral Moon, even at its floor, it's a good card that's going to generate you one rune chant. And a lot of times you can play this in the middle of a combat chain, actually, if a hero has lost life. Could be you, could be your opponent. But say you're trying to go super wide with a bunch of rune gate attacks, and say you play a mob into a deathly whale. You break the chain, you've got 2 rune chants sitting there because you and your opponent have taken damage. You got a 3-cost rune gate that's sitting in the banish zone. How are you going to play it out? You're 1 rune chant short, but since somebody's lost life that turn, you can play the Funeral Moon and generate that last rune chant that you need to go ahead and rune gate your next attack. So I really love this card. It's got a lot of use in any deck, and I think its ceiling is pretty high, but we just haven't quite figured out all the different ways you can use it. Okay. So I would include 3 in the base deck, cause the 3 block means it's not bad in a pinch. You can just block with it. But as we go into the different strategies for Vynnset, you may want to remove 1 or 2 of these from the deck. Maybe all 3, but I just really love the card, so I wouldn't do it. Oblivion. Yes, let's throw it in the deck. All right, so talk about Oblivion here. Again, when you're looking for cards to put in a hero's deck, when they are presented to us in a new set, obviously you're going to look at the specializations, and this is a Vynnset specialization. Play this only if you control exactly 6 rune chants, and it's going to create Nazareth, the Soul Harrower token. Okay, so this is going to give you basically a 6 health, 6 attack ally. This card, it's blue, it's a no block. The no block can be a liability at times, but you can always pitch it for blue, so that's good. It's really important for matchups where your opponent wants to fatigue you. So you're going to want to try to, in those matchups, if you have a really good turn where you've hit with Deathly Wail and then maybe hit with a Flail and you're ending the turn with 3 rune chants, you may want to take a turn off where you're just generating some more rune chants, play a little defensively, and then you're gonna play this card as an instant on a threatening offensive turn when you try to take the tempo back, maybe 2 turns later. So the nice thing about this is that the rune chants do trigger 1 by 1, so you can, if you have more than 6 rune chants, if you have 7 or 8, you can let 1 rune chant go off, 2 rune chants go off, and then at that moment when you still have 6 rune chants triggering, you can play Oblivion to summon Nazareth. So this definitely, I think you need this card as a hedge to fatigue, no matter what deck that you're playing. And it's similar to Doomsday and Levia, where it's legendary, so you can only have 1 in your deck. And when you do play it, it feels very, very strong. and can kind of give you a substantial increase in your win rate for those specific games. So sometimes it comes along, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it comes along when you have like no rune chance and it's really just not what you need at the time. But on the bright side, you can always just banish it to Vynnset's ability, and it doesn't have blood debt, so you're getting one rune chant out of it, and you get to save the rest of your hand. All right. Notably, this card is very strong into Icelander as well. If they're playing more arcane damage, if they're playing the more arcane damage version of the deck, then they're not going to have many good ways to deal with this ally. So that's going to let you attack for 6 each turn, but keep cards in hand so that you can pay into Arcane Barrier to prevent a lot of the damage that they're throwing at you. So Oblivion, super fun card, tons of flavor. Heck, it just feels awesome when you summon a big creature to your side. So that card is 100% in the deck. Although, yeah, maybe it starts in the sideboard and you just throw it in. All right, lastly, just a little bit about the equipment. So let's look it up. The number one important card that you're going to put in the Vynnset deck is Vexing Quillhand. So this card gives you basically 2 Runechant tokens on demand as an action. So sometimes this can really help you turn the tempo whenever you're, say you've been blocking out for a couple turns. Maybe you even have to block with all the cards in your hand, or your opponent's playing a ton of disruption, so they just strip your whole hand of cards, so you're not able to banish cards and generate rune chants. Well, you can just try to keep 1 rune gateable attack and then banish that at the beginning of your turn, pop the Vexing Quillhand, and at least you can throw that, have enough rune chance to throw that attack at your opponent. It also like enables a lot of the go wide turns where you need a couple rune chants just to enable your next rune gate attack after expending a few with your first attack that has go again. So this is, arguably maybe better than Grasp of the Arknight for Vynnset. We are going to put the Grasp of the Arknight in the deck, the traditional arm piece, legendary arm piece for Runeblade, because it's a 2 with Battle Worn. So in some matchups, you definitely want that 2 Battle Worn. For example, Bravo or Dorinthia, you're just going to want to have a little bit of a fridge that you can kind of rely on to stop some of their disruption or to prevent Dorinthia from getting more counters on her Dawnblade. It does have an ability as well, which is pay 2 to create a rune chant. In Vynnset, honestly, this can enable you to play a lot of 2-cost Runegate cards because you banish that 2-cost Runegate at the beginning of your turn. If you keep just 1 blue, you can pitch into the Grasp. It costs 1 more if you already have the rune chant from the banish, so it's going to cost 3, your whole blue. But then at least you have 2 rune chants and you can go ahead and send off the rune gate attack. So it's never a bad card to have. And I really enjoy the playstyle where it's give and take, a little bit more mid-range than things seem to be right now. Right now it seems very aggressive, but thinking about blocking some turns, this can really come in handy. So we put that in there. So speaking of defending, Dyadic Carapace is going to go into the deck here for the same reason. It's not a Battle Worn, but it's a temper 2. So, you're getting 2 block and then 1 block out of this card. I think it just really fits Vynnset because previous Runeblades, they're going to use the Aether Iron Weave to try and generate 2 resources for playing a non-attack and an attack. But oftentimes with Vynnset, you just don't really you just don't really need the resources, because whatever you're coming in with after your first non-attack and an attack, oftentimes it's going to be free. Either the flail, which we're going to play because it is her specialty. It was designed to be played by her. Rosetta Thorn, it's a powerful card, I know. It's a powerful weapon, but it's also going to be out the door any minute now. So we're going to try and play the deck as LSS intended us to. So anyways, yeah, you just don't need the resources from the the Aether Ironweave. Now, speaking of resources, the Spring Tunic, you know it, I know it. It's just a powerful card. So at the very least, we're going to consider this card in the sideboard for some matchups, like where you don't need the block as much. You need, say you want to go a little bit more aggressive, enable some of these turns. You know, having the one resource from the Tunic will allow you to play things like the Runeblood Incantation and Envelop in Darkness using that counter. So actually that lets you block with an extra card if you have that resource available to you on a turn where you want to play one of these two cards. So there's an argument for Tunic. There's always an argument for Tunic. And yeah, this deck is no exception. So we're going to put in the sideboard. We're going to prioritize the Carapace most times. Yeah, but we're going to have it there as an option. Creepers. Let's talk about creepers for a minute. Spellbound Creepers allows you to do nutty, magical Runeblade wizardry. So once per turn instant, pay 1, put a bind counter on it. You may play your next non-attack action as though it were an instant. So lots of times this allows you to play your non-attacks to basically the ones that have go again will create an action point. And especially in the case of like Shadow Puppetry, if you play this in the reaction phase off the creepers, you not only create an action point, but the Shadow Puppetry is giving your next attack go again. So this is kind of, the creepers enable you to really do, you know, some really big turns with multiple attacks. We would never leave home without our Spellbound Creepers. You can play this in every matchup. You know, lastly, I think it's just kind of been proven, unfortunately, as much as I love the Arcanite Skullcap, the Crown of Providence is kind of just going to be the go-to headpiece. Blocks for 2 lets you cycle your arsenal. You know, lots of times you're going to have to banish a card at the beginning of your turn. So blocking with the crown to, you know, get an extra card basically in hand from the arsenal, you know, lets you have a turn sometimes when you would not have a turn. So it's good in Vynnset. All right, the last card we're going to put in the deck is the Grimoire of the Haunt. Basically, it's AB1, and then as an instant, pay 1, banish this, create an Eloquence token. As I mentioned, there are some tricks that you can play with the Eloquence token with Funeral Moon to create action points out of nowhere. You know, for now, I think, you know, it's just in there for the AB, and then rarely you can play it to, you know, get some tricky action points on your opponent. But that's about it. This is gonna be the core that I'm gonna go back to every time that I try and build a list for Vynnset. And from here, probably we're gonna go a couple different strategies. One is gonna be, I think, as it was intended for Vynnset to be played, with perhaps one large attack each turn. A second one is going to be a go wide strategy, which I really like to employ personally. And then third, I think there's going to be kind of an OTK strategy for Vynnset that abuses the Eloquence token, maybe Tome of Find All. and some other card draw. So, hey, we'll investigate it all. But for now, just want to say thanks. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.